my name is Madeline and welcome to my channel Cozy Cottage Chapters. Today I have a very exciting video to share with you. I have a list of cottagecore book recommendations. I have been wanting to make this video for quite some time now, but I wanted to save it for spring because the spring season just feels like the perfect time for cottagecore in my opinion. There's just something about seeing the first flower blooms of the season and the birds singing that just feels so very cottagecore. If you're not familiar with the cottagecore aesthetic, it has become really popular in the past couple of years. I will see if I can find like a little mood board or some pictures to put up here to show you. Anyways, I have been a fan of this style, this aesthetic for a long time. Like since I was a kid. I remember decorating my bedroom in antiques. I would love to go antiquing, and I had, you know, all of these pink florals, and I loved this kind of vintage grandma type aesthetic even when I was an early teenager. So this is something I've loved for a long time, but it isn't until probably recently that I discovered a lot of these books and I have just fallen in love with them. These are the kinds of books that just really speak to me, really stick around and are memorable. And so I have assembled a list of some of my favorites that I think just really encapsulate this cottagecore vibe. There is quite a mix of genres here. There are classics, there are children's books, there's some fantasy, there's a little bit for everyone. So what I think we will do is just start with the physical books that I have here, and then I will talk about some ebooks. I also have some bonus books that are on my TBR that I hope to get to soon, that I've heard really good things about, and I think that they would fit cottagecore vibes. So first up, I feel like this book is the quintessential cottagecore book. It is the book that springs to mind for me and is very well loved and for good reason, and that is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Honestly, the whole Anne series, if you haven't read all of the Anne books, you should. A lot of people read Anne of Green Gables and then stop there, but you shouldn't. You should read the whole series, they're so good. But what I think makes this book a cottagecore kind of book is the whimsy of Anne. She has such a great imagination. She's renames things that she observes in nature. She gives them kind of special, unique names. I'm thinking of the White Way of Delight in particular. I always think about that when I'm walking on this path on our street, and it makes me think of Anne's White Way of Delight. Yeah, Anne just has such a great way of seeing things. There's a lot of beautiful nature writing and description in here, and I think this is a book that can be really enjoyed any season, but especially in the spring and summertime, I think is a really fun time to read Anne of Green Gables if you haven't done that yet. Yeah, I just love Anne's outlook on life, her positivity, and this is just such a charming story for both children and adults. Another children's book that I didn't read as a kid but read as an adult is The Little White Horse by Elizabeth Goudge. As you can see, we have a unicorn on the front, and that is a part of this story. There is just so much that feels very cottagecore in this book. Particularly, I'm thinking of character Maria Merriweather's bedroom that she has. It's the kind of ideal bedroom for any cottagecore lover. I'll just say that. I don't want to give too much away. But this book is just full of whimsy and wonder. I think I'll read you the back of this one. The beautiful valley of Moonacre is shadowed by the memory of the Moon Princess and the mysterious little white horse. To her surprise, Maria Merriweather, a stranger to Moonacre Manor, finds herself involved with what happened to the Moon Princess so many years before. She is determined to restore peace and happiness to the whole of Moonacre Valley, and Maria usually gets her way. Yeah, this is a really fun story. I highly, highly recommend it. An author who I think really any of her books would be great picks. There is one that stands out in my mind that feels maybe a little more cottagecore-esque than the others. It also, I think, has the most spring, summertime vibes to it. And it also has this beautiful, beautiful cover, and that is Emma by Jane Austen. I mean, the strawberries and the pink and the flowers just make this the perfect kind of spring or summer book. But basically, we are following Emma Woodhouse, who is a bit of a matchmaker. She is kind of meddling in people's affairs and trying to set people up. Just a complex person. She has strengths, she has flaws, and I just love her character growth in this book. There's lots of fun, like I said, springtime settings and things that are going on in this book. It just feels like a lot of fun. A lot of cottagecore books, I think, feel light. Like all of these that I've recommended so far, I would say are lighter books. You know, there might be a heavy topic or something that's discussed within it, but overall there's just this gentleness to the story. You know that things are going to work out okay and all of that. But this author that I have next is a little bit different. His stories are much sadder. There's just a lot more complexity to them, but I wanted to include him on this list because I really think his nature writing is so beautiful, and it just, to me, encapsulates so much of what is cottagecore. And I'm talking about Thomas Hardy. I've only read 2 of his books, and of the 2, I chose to include Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which I think is kind of which I think is the one that most people pick up first. I'll read you the back of this one as well. Young Tess Durbeyfield attempts to restore her family's fortunes by claiming their connection with the aristocratic D'Urbervilles, but Alec D'Urberville is a rich wastrel who seduces her and makes her life miserable. When Tess meets Angel Clare, she is offered true love and happiness, but her past catches up with her and she faces an agonizing moral choice. So without saying too much more about this, what I think makes this very cottagecore, like I said, is the nature writing. Thomas Hardy has just such beautiful ways of describing the countryside. Nature writing is so beautiful, and also just the descriptions of everyday kind of country life. Thomas Hardy's characters often are farmers or just people who are working closely with nature. And I just love the descriptions of that kind of daily life and what it was like. It's not an overly glamorized look at these things. Like, we see how hard life was if you were, you know, a farmer, or Tess is at one point a milkmaid. We see like how challenging that life was. But we also see a beautiful side of it in his writing and description of things. Just, I really enjoyed this book. It is the one I prefer over Far From the Madding Crowd, which is the other Thomas Hardy I read. But yeah, his books are just very cottagecore for me. And then finally, to round out my physical books that I have to recommend, I have another children's book that I did not read until I was an adult, and everyone is sort of familiar with the story, I think, but that is Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. This is a collection of Winnie the Pooh and the House at Pooh Corner. There are 2 other books, I believe, in the Pooh series that I haven't read yet, but these are just so lovely. Of course, everyone knows Winnie the Pooh from Disney and all of the characters, but reading the stories is just so much fun. It's so funny. There's so much depth to it, and again, this is a kind of book that I think adults will appreciate some of the subtleties of things that maybe kids won't realize, and it is just such a good time. The illustrations in this book are absolutely lovely and just really add something to it. I feel like that's something I love about children's books, that just really make them fit into this kind of cottagecore vibe a bit better, is the illustrations. They just add something to it, and even when I'm reading a classic and there are illustrations included, I love it so much. I wish we could bring that back. Illustrations in books, because there's something so lovely about that. I just remember laughing when I read this book. I remember just really enjoying it, and I cannot recommend Pooh enough. So I can't recommend this one highly enough. All right, on to the non-physical books that I have. First up, I want to talk about The Glass Gate by Hannah Sandvig. This is a book I actually read recently, this past February. It is a Cinderella retelling, kind of set between the modern world and the fairy world. We travel back and forth. And what makes this book particularly cottagecore for me was the descriptions of fashion. Our main character, Ella, is an aspiring fashion designer, and so she has the most detailed descriptions of the clothes that she sees in the fairy world. Think dresses made out of flower petals and all of these different kinds of silk fabrics, and that was just so fun to read about. I don't think I've ever read a book that had such detailed descriptions of clothing and fashion, and I particularly loved that that was in the fairy world and it was kind of a bit more whimsical and a different kind of element to that. So I think I have quite a lot of actually fantasy that are ebooks that I read. So next up is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This, I will admit, is the only Brandon Sanderson I have read yet, but I really want to read more because I enjoyed this so much. I actually read this on my phone. The library book wasn't compatible with my Kindle, and so it is the only book that I've ever read on my phone, and I hate reading on my phone, but I did it for this book. That's how much I enjoyed it, is that I would put up with reading on my phone. This is basically kind of a twist on The Princess Bride, where our main heroine, instead of waiting for her love to come back, she goes out and finds him. And so Tress sets out on this adventure to find her lost love, and there's definitely adventure. It's not just kind of a quiet novel. There's also a lot of cozy, kind of comforting things. Tress has a teacup collection, which I loved. I love tea and I love collecting pretty teacups, and so I loved that. And I just really enjoyed this book. Again, it was funny. I wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was, but it was very funny. I laughed out loud a number of times, and I just really enjoyed this kind of spin on The Princess Bride. Next up is a classic that I feel like has to be on a list of cottagecore books, and that is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have read The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring, and I have not read the rest of the Lord of the Rings books, but I adored The Hobbit so much. I did not think I was going to like it as much as I did. I enjoy fantasy from time to time, but I just had it in my mind that this was just above kind of what I would enjoy in terms of fantasy, but I was wrong. This book is lovely. I fell in love with Bilbo Baggins, our main character. He is very much a homebody, but he gets sent on this adventure, this quest, and we follow him throughout. There's, again, some beautiful nature writing and description of things. It's just a very cozy book to read. I read it in the winter time, and I think that's actually a really nice time to read The Hobbit, but you could read it at any point. Like I said, I much preferred this to The Fellowship of the Ring. This, I think, is a much easier way to kind of dip your toes into fantasy if you're not much of a fantasy reader, and it's very beginner fantasy friendly, I would say. Next up is a mystery, and that is Shady Hollow. This is a series. I've only read the first book though, and we follow forest animal characters who are, living kind of like people, and there's a crime that has to be solved. Our main detective is a fox, and she is a newspaper writer, and she's the one who's trying to kind of solve things, figure out what happened. This is a book for anyone who loves books with animal characters who are acting like people. I think that's fun from time to time to read books like that, and this was just really cozy. You live in this small village, and you get to see all of these different characters who have different jobs in the village, and yeah, it was a fun read. I have Wormwood Abbey. This is by Christina Bear. I've talked about this series a little bit. It's been a little while since I read one of the books, but I really enjoy this series. Historical fantasy set in the Victorian period, I believe. It's either set in the Victorian period or just after, I believe. And the series is just a lot of fun. Again, there are fantasy elements, there are dragons, but it's very based in a historical time period, and so you get a lot of that as well. But basically, we're following our main character, Edith Worms, her and her family move to her father's ancestral home after her uncle passes away. They inherit the estate and they move there. They meet Edith's cousins. She has a couple of cousins who are living there. And we see that when they move there, things are not as they appear. There are some secrets in the Worms family, and they have to do with dragons. And we see Edith really kind of coming into her own. She has such a deep love for her family, which I really enjoy in these books. Her parents, her father and her stepmother, as well as her cousins, she really comes to appreciate them and care for them and be a good friend and cousin to them. And I just really enjoy it. These are very heartwarming stories and just very, very cozy. Next up is A Defensive Wizard's Guide to Baking by T. Kingfisher. So another fantasy kind of book, although this feels very much like it's set in England. They don't explicitly state that, but it has kind of all of those vibes to it. This is YA fantasy, and that is typically a genre that I would steer clear from. But there's something about this book that I really enjoyed, and I think that's really the baking element of it. We're basically following this 14-year-old girl, Mona, who is an apprentice in a bakery. And one day she shows up and there's a dead body in the bakery. And she, on a quest to figure out what happened to this person, what's going on in her city, because there's some strange things that are starting to happen. And wizards, magicians are kind of being targeted by the government. Mona is a magician, what she calls a small magician or something like that, where her magical abilities are limited to bread. She can control bread. She has this sourdough starter who's like alive in some ways that she has as a friend named Bob. I think it was Bob. And yeah, so she can control bread, and there's just a lot of really fun scenes that take place in the bakery. That's really what I enjoyed most about this book. The whole kind of mystery aspect of it for me was kind of secondary to the baking scenes and the descriptions of her time in the bakery. I just really, really enjoyed that. All right, I double checked my list and I failed to mention a physical book, and how could I forget Heidi by Joanna Spiri. I have talked quite a bit, I feel like, recently about this book. It was in my favorite middle grade books of the past year video, and I just love this so much. I love this book so much. It is so comforting, so cozy. We are following this little girl who goes to live on the mountain with her grandfather. Her grandfather is kind of this grumpy old man who nobody in the town gets along with, but Heidi warms his heart in some really beautiful ways, and we follow their life together. Eventually Heidi has to leave her beloved grandfather, and she just dreams of the mountains, of being back there and being able to run around and be just kind of free, exploring. Again, beautiful nature writing, beautiful descriptions of the mountains and the changing seasons, and there's just so much to love about Heidi. It also packs a bit of a punch, and there's some great moral messages in this book as well. All right, and finally, my last book recommendation, and then we'll get into some of my TBR books, some bonus books, and that is The Woods in Winter by Stella Gibbons. So a lot of these books I feel like have spring, summery kind of vibes to them. This is a wintry book, but I wanted to include it because I feel like there's so much that makes this book a cottagecore kind of book. For instance, the main character goes to live in this thatched roof cottage, which, I mean, like, that's perfect. That is cottagecore, a thatched roof. She has this dog that she's rescued from the city and brought with her to the cottage. but there's also just a lot of other animals that she comes into contact with. She has a way with you know, connecting with animals, and that's really fun to read about. Some of them, I will admit, are not the kinds of animals I would want to be in close contact with, like cockroaches. But there are some other animals that are, you know, a bit more enjoyable to read about, we'll say. Yeah, our main character, she's not the softest woman. She has a pretty rough exterior. She can be kind of sassy with people, and just, you know, she's not this soft, very feminine kind of character, but I really enjoyed the story. There's just a lot of beautiful nature writing, a lot of cozy wintry type scenes, and I just loved the setting of this small village town. We get to see all of the different village people and the different interactions that they have, and there's just a lot to enjoy about this book. I really liked it. I have 2 books on my TBR that I hope to get to. The first is the Cottage Tales series. I will post a picture of it. I don't remember what the first book is called. I think the name of the series is Cottage Tales. But this is a cozy mystery series set in the Lake District following Beatrix Potter. And I believe there are animals involved kind of again as characters in the story. And I just love the sound of that. I love the setting of the Lake District. I love Beatrix Potter. This feels like a lot of fun and a perfect kind of series for me. Next up is a book I have technically read, but I think I read it way too fast because honestly, I could not tell you very much about this story, and I want to reread it slowly, try to sink into it and get a bit more from it, because I think it would be the perfect kind of cottagecore read. I just need to take my time with it. And that is Middlemarch by George Eliot. It is gigantic. And I think part of my problem with really big books was that I used to feel like I needed to just kind of read this book before I move on to something else. Like, this would be my book that I was reading, and I wouldn't read very much at the same time, and I would have to finish this before I could read something new. I've learned that method does not work for me. I need to read a lot of things at once. And I need to take my time with big chunky classics like this. And this is one that I want to reread, and like I said, just read slowly, try to get more out of it, because this takes place in a small village, and we have this wide cast of characters, and it's just really what I remember about daily life and the people in this village, their interactions, how they grow and change and evolve. And so much of that is what I love in books. I love kind of these quiet stories that just take their time to unfold. So I think I would really enjoy this. I just need to reread it. So that is it for my list of cottagecore books recommendations, some that I want to get to. Let me know if you've read any of these or what you would maybe add to this list. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.